Welcome to AFINNity, a conversational podcast series that shares the thoughts, observations, and insights of professional marketers working within teams of specialists worldwide.
Hello, this is the AFINNity Podcast, brought by Fin Partners and our international teams from around the globe. Welcome to AFINNity, a conversational podcast that shares the best that Fin Partners offers in integrated marketing, told by the experts who make it happen. I'm Millie King in London.
Hi everyone, I'm Joyce Leong from Singapore.
I'm Thomas Morris, also in London.
And I'm Joshua Wang, also in Singapore.
So ASOS, in their latest quarter, reported almost a £90 million loss, prompting the company's CEO to state that they need to move away from over-reliance on performance marketing and focus on growth backed by brand building. At the same time, Airbnb has recently said that its full funnel approach to marcoms is delivering strong returns on investments, a claim that comes as the company reports its first ever profitable quarter. So let's break this down and learn more about this. So what exactly are the benefits of awareness, and how does that contrast with performance marketing, and how does that translate into so-called full funnel brand building?
It's interesting to start by looking at kind of the history. The Airbnb and ASOS examples are interesting because there's a reversion towards longer term brand building. And I feel like we've jumped back and forth on this over time. Like historically, organizations spend lots of time, lots of money, resources, driving big branding campaigns. And then when we turn to a greater kind of availability of technology, there was a wave of brands that went completely the other way and focused only on performance marketing. And I think that's understandable. Why? Because you can better attribute your success and your sales to spend. But I think that somewhat is the sacrifice of purpose, storytelling, differentiation, those kind of long-term elements that really drive affinity with consumers. So I think there has to be a balance between those two things. It's interesting to see that swing back and forth.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the benefits of awareness versus performance, I think we both have roles to play in the marketing mix for any sort of brand. And I think it would be detrimental to say, we're just going to focus on one or the other and not consider that both of them are important at different stages of the buying journey for the audiences, right? And I think when we talk about a lot of the brand building main objectives for marketers, right, it's a lot more to do with long-term building trust, building sort of the brand equity, building sort of the loyalty portion. And then when you talk about the performance aspect, it's to really answer the question that they have from a lot of stakeholders about what is this delivering in terms of ROI? Can I actually drive more sales with what you're doing in terms of marketing? So they do fit into the overall marketing mix and marketing plan, but at different stages. And both of them should actually be considered when you're putting together any sort of strategy or plan together.
The marketing directors are hard pushed, like all departments in organizations. They've got to show value for money and a return on investment. So how exactly does awareness marketing help bottom line?
I think this is a conversation we do have with a lot of our clients as well, right? Where when they're feeling the pressures and being asked, like, the marketing dollar budget may be shrinking. And that's when there's the strong push to say, I'm going to need to show returns on that. And therefore, performance marketing becomes so almost like an automatic response to that. But what we've seen as well is that when brands focus only on performance, is that in long term, they're going to find that the people they want to target, that bottom of funnel, which is where performance tends to focus on, starts to shrink because they haven't put in the investment to build up the long-term brand equity or the sort of trust and loyalty that's needed for any of the audiences that want to actually then make a decision that their brand is the one that you want to buy into.
I think just to build on that, your question earlier about measurement and proving ROI is so critical to this debate. And I think it's the wedge between performance marketing and long-term brand building. Is why we start off with that question at all. Like, what are the benefits of one versus the other? In an ideal world, you would do both and you would be able to measure the ROI right down the funnel. And I think one of the challenges there is that probably the sophistication of measurement on the awareness side as at Tim Holdens, we've invested a lot in this. And over the past few months, we've spent a lot of time looking at how we can have one kind of holistic measurement system that brings together both those kind of performance marketing metrics and longer term awareness metrics. And how can we build a full story around the success of our campaigns that isn't just focused on performance marketing or awareness and top of the funnel, but looking right across that funnel and how we can deem ROI there. So that's a brilliant question. It's a big initiative for us, and I think we're making good progress on that.
I think it's important to remember that no one person exists at any one stage of the funnel at any given time. Right? Marketing is supposed to be happening across the entire funnel. And so if we're focusing on just one aspect, you're really losing the before and after, or the pre-stage and the post-stage that comes after that. And really that's just doing, in my opinion, that's doing a bit of disservice, not just to the consumer, but also to the tools and the capabilities that we have today to measure and to see across all of these individual stages, right? And in fact, I think even the stage mentality is on the cusp of becoming a bit outdated, looking at even just breaking apart the individual touch points and just seeing what are people thinking about it at any given point or channel or touch point or whatever. I think it's becoming much more prevalent. And I think that helps us provide a better picture of what is happening at any one point in the context of this entire consumer trip.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Josh. It's like a funnel, right? If you've got no potential customers coming in the top, eventually you're going to run out of customers at the bottom. You've got no ones to run performance marketing on. But I want to dig more into this question of measurement. So I understand that you guys have got some sophisticated techniques, but is there a difference to measuring the effectiveness and the value of awareness marketing or so-called brand building?
Absolutely. I think to prove the value of full funnel marketing, you need measurement tools, you need technology, and you need tactics that leverage how that kind of upper funnel brand building interacts with kind of lower funnel performance objectives. And certainly on the kind of awareness side, and I think this brings in PR also, what makes it possible is the increased sophistication of data and how we can measure those different metrics on the aware side. So if we look at PR, for instance, which I would put upper funnel, we've moved away from vanity PR metrics, or at least PR agencies should have moved away from those. We don't just look at volume and reach. We would look at engagement, action. How are we moving people down those funnels? Can we run brand surveys with our top audiences to understand their affinity and their emotional connection with the brand? And can we understand how that is going to drive action on that part? So I think the increased sophistication of upper funnel measurement really helps the concept, which isn't a new one, by the way. Like full funnel marketing is not a new concept, but I think there's a shift back towards thinking about brand awareness because of changing consumer mindset and behavior. And I think increased sophistication on the measurement side really aids that.
That's fascinating. And then the question of ROI, can we take these brand measurements, or so-called awareness value measurement, and connect them with our performance measurement to create an overall ROI? Is that possible today? Or is there just too much going on for us to be able to reliably be that for clients?
I think it's a challenge actually for you to say directly correlate what you measure in terms of brand awareness to the actual bottom line. But I think it also got to do with how you understand the way consumers behave in relation to the brand, right? Because people seem to assume that because it's a funnel, it's a linear progression. You go straight from awareness, you go to interest, then you go to consideration and decisioning. But in reality, the consumer actually moves back and forth between those stages. And that's something we've seen even in terms of the measurement we do when we look at intent-based data, where there are tools out there that have the ability to measure, obviously, where the audiences are at the different stages of the buying journey, right? And we actually have seen brands or like audiences fluctuating between the different stages, moving back and forth. And therefore, with that whole premise, is the understanding that if you just assume that the journey is linear, you will say, okay, now that we've done our job in awareness, we're going to now focus on the fundamentals of performance. But that in itself would be a mistake, because then when the audiences move back and forth, you lose the opportunity there to say that we maintain or we have a constant brand presence, or also investment in the brand portion of the marketing funnel, right? So that wherever the customers are, whether it is going to be at the awareness stage, in the middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, we're going to be able to capture their interest at the different stations in time. And to a certain extent, it's also the recognition that at the end of the day, the audiences are the ones to where they are in the funnel and what kind of level of interest they have at that point in time. And as the brand, you have to be ready to capture that at those different stages and not shift away because you feel like, oh, we've done enough here and we just want to put our money only in one part of the funnel. You miss out on opportunity in that aspect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the reason why ROI is a difficult question to answer, at least in my mind, is because it's a financial performance metric. I think it's much easier to assess in terms of performance marketing because that's what performance marketing is geared up to prove. So the kind of utopia of making the kind of awareness to sales connection, that's pretty difficult to isolate. And like we can certainly measure parts of that. And there's some kind of like qualitative assumptions that we would build in. And I think like a question we would get a lot from colleagues, clients is if you can't connect awareness to sales, like why do that? And why measure that? We often get like, how much should we spend on measurement? Why is measurement important if we can't make that specific connection? To me, it just makes sense to spend like a portion of your budget. So let's say you spend 10% of your budget on measurement to figure out whether the 90% of your spend is actually working. And that seems to me to be a pretty sensible thing to do. And I guess it's the kind of element of a lot of the time you're communicating, you're shouting out at your audience. You also need to listen. If you don't listen, you can't course correct and increase efficiency. So I think even though that connection, that PR or awareness to sales is difficult to find, still make sure you've got that full funnel measurement in place.
I think that's right. I think we as professionals and clients and ourselves, we can subjectively understand the logic, but maybe even if we're missing the objective ability to measure precise ROI from brand building, I think we can appreciate its value. Josh, what sorts of questions should clients be asking themselves when plugging in a new marketing tactic? Should they always be looking at their full funnel strategy and trying to fit that in the right way? What should they be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they definitely should be looking at their full funnel strategies. But I think the most important question that we always advise our clients to start with is just, what is your customer thinking? Who is your customer? What do they care about? What are they doing at each of these stages? And ultimately, what will move to them, right? And even if they don't know, there are programs that they can run in terms of market research, in terms of just studying the customer to be able to help figure that out. But I think there's also no replacement to, of course, implementing measurement at every stage, now that we have the ability to do, but also recognizing that there isn't necessarily going to be any one initiative or any one measurable metric that will fully be able to capture the ROI or the true impact of everything. I think it's because it's such a convoluted ecosystem of decisions like we made that we have to recognize that there are many factors that go into this. I think another really important thing is to allow the ability to test and allow yourself the ability to get things, especially as a client. We very often get the question, of course, how are you spending this money? Well, is this program going to be worth it? Because you want to make X% more on whatever money that we're paying you or putting into this program or whatever, right? But that also makes the assumption that you already know exactly how your customer or consumer base is going to react, respond, act. And I think time and time again, marketers have shown that they get that wrong. So there has to be a certain level of humility when it comes to that and just say, look, I'm willing to invest. I'm willing to find out as long as we're converging and moving towards a direction where performance overall is increasing and improving.
I think that's really fascinating because I guess it's a funnel. We all understand the funnel, but for every sector and for every industry sector and every country and market and consumer group, I guess the structure of that funnel is going to be slightly different. So just building on that point then, so for multinational companies that should work with, who are selling into multiple different markets, do they have to create a specific funnel strategy for each market that they're entering? Or is it possible to have a more global and holistic approach to full funnel marketing?
I think maybe I can start out with, depending on what has historically worked in the past, you can probably elect to start with a more holistic, maybe what has worked in one market, we can try it in another market. But I think another thing to be very careful about is even though these are stages, the messages or the content or whatever that's being put out at each of these stages needs to reflect the local audience, the local culture, and the local pop. So it could be a situation where functionally or structurally, the funnel is perfectly fine. It's just at each stage, you're just not resonating with people for whatever reason. And I think that's where, especially when it comes to global research, that's when it becomes very important to understand the differences between the markets and what resonates from a messaging perspective.
I love it when Josh talks about consumers and understanding your market, because I think that's really the primary source of confusion we see so often, is that we don't really know who we're marketing to. And that obviously is a major problem before you even get to moving your audience down the funnel and targeting different stages. You've got to spend time to do the research, create your ideal customer profile, create your marketing personas. Otherwise, that marketing is going to be generic. You're not going to reach the right people. You're not going to drive action. So I think it's important to remember, like, the concept of full funnel marketing, like crafting a full funnel marketing strategy takes time. It takes investment. That strategy won't just land in your lap. Start with your consumers and really understand what drives their perception at the start, their awareness, and then their actions later on. I think that's it's such a critical part of that strategy. And it's a part that a lot of times marketers will rush through, I would say.
I would say that from my experience of working with clients in Asia as well, that it isn't always possible to have one strategy that applies across all markets, even in Asia. And there will be key markets that requires a lot more sort of localization to the way we approach the full funnel or strategy for them. And it's got to do with differences in terms of the language, the culture, but also sometimes the ecosystem in which they operate in, where we will find oftentimes also a lot of the digital platforms are different in those markets, and also the stages of the markets where they're at in terms of where they are in terms of maturity, and how then do the consumers or customers react in those markets, all going to be very different. And knowing that will then help us make sure that whatever sort of full funnel strategy or plan that we'll go into market with, those are customized with a good understanding, like Joshua and Thomas said, about the audiences and the markets operating in, and then making sure that it really resonates with who we want to talk to as a brand.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's amazing how often audiences, consumers, humans will surprise you. And that's why you have to do the research. So we conducted a study into Gen Z and their fashion buying behaviors. And what we looked at was they're concerned about the impact of climate change. A lot of them are interested in vegan food, plant-based diets. They clearly think about planetary impact. When they buy groceries, they think about the environment a lot. So all of this is leading in a certain direction. But then the kicker is that when it comes to fashion, a lot of them are purchasing fast fashion. They're not quite so interested in the sustainability of brands. And that seems to be contradictory to everything else you know about that generation and that audience. So I would say don't make any assumptions about your audience and what may drive them, because they can often surprise you.
Also, audiences change over time. So it's also not advisable to do one study and think it's going to last you 10 years, because honestly, it's going to change, and it can change as fast as within the same year itself. If something major happens, when COVID hit and all our behaviors change, or it could change within the next few years. So you need to do that research on a more sort of regular, ongoing basis, with the understanding that you want to capture changes in consumers' behavior before it takes you off guard and you think you've got a strategy for them, but you're not really, you're seeing more as outdated brand because you're not in the times with them.
Yeah, absolutely. The value of measurements is what you're talking about. It goes back to Josh's point about how important testing, the tactics and assumptions are. So if we can finish by going around and giving one key piece of advice for your clients when they're looking at full funnel branding. And obviously, guys, on here, take your time and think about, I think it'd be nice just to end with one key thing that you would like to say on this topic. But beyond that, is there anything else that anyone wants to say that should be said? And tell me the question. I can pose that now.
I think maybe I can start. And I'm not sure if this is derailing the conversation or we're moving into a bit of a parallel topic. But for me, it's as a client, don't get so caught up in the individual stages or the overall funnel or what the drop-offs or the conversion rates or whatever go on from stage to stage. End up having a big picture view. And just remember that at any given point, in order to get to the bottom part of the funnel, or using the funnel analogy, you have to pass through the upper stages of that funnel. And if, for example, you're looking at each of these stages in isolation and the customer experience or the brand experience is vastly different in each of these stages, and you also risk having inconsistency and just overall poor customer experience, right? And I think one of the ways to look beyond this is to not forget about the power of the brand, because the brand story, the brand experience, all of that stuff, if you divorce it from mapping it to the funnel, for example, it really encompasses every single touch point, every single experience that you have with this customer, no matter what stage of the funnel it's in. And if you use that as a bit of a guiding light, it can help realign some of the inconsistencies that you might have along this.
I think that's a brilliant point, Josh. And we've spoken a lot today about the value of branding to work at the top of the funnel and push people down. But I suppose we've got a strong brand. It allows us to charge higher, charge more than competition, increases profits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just if we're talking about the brand experience, and I'm not necessarily talking about like branding or the creative side of brand or whatever, which is also very important, but just the entire brand experience, when we say these are the types of interactions that we want to have with our customers, no matter what stage they're on, that really, I think, does a lot to fill in some of the gaps that we might have in terms of initiatives and programs. And I think it also just provides more of I see it as like a foundation or a platform for a consumer to be able to interact with you in a positive way, no matter what stage they're at.
I'm assuming that we have convinced the listeners of the value of full funnel marketing strategies. So I wanted to wrap up just with kind of 4 key points on how you would go about operationalizing that strategy. I think there are 4 main areas of focus. The first is you need an overarching strategy, a marketing strategy that goes beyond brand and it goes beyond performance, and it wraps those 2 things together into one leading light that everyone is following. Number 2 is strong measurement, especially top of the funnel metrics. So at Think Global Intelligence, we actually recently just launched our brand purpose alignment study, which is available at all good research stores. Go have a look at that. And that helps brands assess their target audience's preferences and priorities and predict the outcome of these brand activities. It's a kind of very powerful tool that helps in the upper funnel measurement. 3, focus on connected KPIs. So create integrated KPIs and reporting dashboards that combine both brand and demand metrics. And 4, think about your operating model across the funnel and continue to educate your whole organization so that they understand how they operate and they can better work together to ensure the success of that strategy.
What I want to tell most of the brands out there is that you need to take a little bit more of a long-term approach to your marketing rather than think of it as a very tactical way of just trying to get sales in. Not that it's not important to get sales, but actually if you take a longer term view to the way you do marketing, it's going to yield you better results. It's going to basically drive better customer relationships. And at the end of the day, it's going to give you better ROIs. So think long term, look at the different touch points that matter to your customers. Make sure that your marketing isn't only focused very narrowly on what we call the low hanging fruits or the conversion aspect of it. And then you're going to find that in the long run, you're going to actually get better profits, better returns, and ultimately drive better business for your brand.
Wise words, Joyce. And we'll finish on those wise words. That concludes today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do, please feel free to subscribe. It's the best way to get access to new episodes. And if you did enjoy it, please also consider leaving us a review. So thank you to our guests, Thomas, Joyce, and Josh. This show was produced by Celine Astril and distributed by Shruti Saxena. If you'd like to find out more about Fin Partners, you can check us out on the website, finpartners.com. Thank you all for joining us and look forward to seeing you again soon.
You've been listening to the AFINNity Podcast, brought to you by Finn Partners, specialists working in offices worldwide. Now we'd love to hear what you think. Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments here or send us an email. You can find all of the contact details at finnpartners.com.